All right, so in this lesson today, kind of similar to what we did yesterday. Yesterday we didn't have an a of 1, we had an a that was prime, so we really only had one option. Today, if you look at all of your a values, they aren't prime anymore, which just means there's more options, so a little bit more educated guess and check as you're factoring. So, still the same steps. You're still checking for GCF and trying to get that out of the way, and then, looking to see if there's any difference of squares, and then factoring your trinomial if there's not. So, if you look at number 1, there is no GCF because of the 40. So we can go right into factoring that trinomial. Well, what you need to do is you need to look at all of the factors of a. So that's going to be 1 and 9 and 3 and 3. Then you need to look at all the factors of 40, which is 1 and 40, 2 and 20. Obviously 3 doesn't work, 4 and 10, or 5 and 8. So some combination, one pair and the other pair, so a pair from the left from the a value and a pair from the right from the c value, is going to have to add or subtract to be -9. That's what we're really trying to get at. So the other thing you want to take into account is that these are going to have to multiply to be a -40, so you'll have one positive sign and one negative sign. So if you set up your two sets of parentheses, couple rules of thumb that I go by. Similar to yesterday, I try and use the numbers that are closest to each other, unless I see some really off numbers, like big numbers or something like that. So what that means is I'm going to start here, and you guys remember this is me just kind of taking an educated guess, meaning I don't know exactly if it's going to work, but I'm trying to kind of look at the numbers as I go and see if I can figure it out. So I'm going to start with 3x and 3x. So that's for my multiplication to get 9x squared. And then I know I need two different signs, so I'm just going to throw them in there. Remember, the signs can change easily. Okay, and then I come over here. Now, if you notice, both of these are going to get multiplied by 3 to get 9. So I'm going to start with my 5 and my 8, just because those are the closest, and that's kind of a good rule of thumb. So 3x times 3x is 9x squared. Then you get 24x, and then minus 15x. So 24 minus 15 is 9x, which is good, except we wanted a -9x, so this just happened to be a good guess on the first try. So since we want a -9x, all we need to do here is change our signs. So that means this will be a +5 and a -8, and then you always want to double check after that. So here, 3x times 3x is 9x squared. Then you get -24x plus 15x. And that gets you -9x, so that's good. And then you always want to double check your c value. 5 times -8 is -40. So then this is your answer. Okay. If you take a look at number 2, again, no GCF because of the 23 in the middle there. So my factors of 10 are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Maybe. There we go. Sorry, that looks kind of crazy. Factors of 42 are 1 and 42, 2 and 21, 3 and 14, 4 doesn't work, 5 doesn't work, and then 6 and 7. Okay, so again, we're going to set up our two sets of parentheses. We're trying to get to a -23. Okay, so to get my 10a squared, I'm going to start with 2x and 5x. Okay, so 2x times 5x is my, oh, sorry, a. It should be an a, but we'll just go with it. All right, and then again, I'm trying to get to 23, so I'm going to start with the numbers that are closest. Again, that's a negative, so I need a negative and a positive here. I'm going to start with 6 and 7. So 2x times 5x is 10x squared. 14 minus 30 is a negative 16. So that's not going to work. So I'm going to try to get to negative 23. So the first thing I'm going to do here, you guys, remember we talked yesterday, you only want to change one thing at a time, kind of like a science experiment. I'm going to just switch these numbers. And now I will have 7 here and 6 here. So 2x times 5x is 10x squared. 12 minus 35 is negative 23. Awesome. Negative 4 times 6 is negative 42. So it only took 2 tries there. You just needed to switch it and you were good. All right, for the next one, we do have a GCF here. If you notice, in all 3 of these terms, they're all divisible by 2 as well as an x. So if I pull out a 2x, then I'm left with 15x squared minus 2 goes into 7 3 times, so that's a 38x, and then plus 24. Okay, so now again your GCF just drops down, maybe. Sorry, here we go again with my awesome computer. Okay, so your GCF just drops down and you have a 2x. And then you're going to set up your 2 sets of parentheses. Okay, so factors of 15 are 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. And then factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, or 4 and 6. So we have a couple options there. So again, we're trying to get to the negative 38. That's what we want to be focused on in the middle there. So again, negative 38, not too far off. So I'm going to start with 3x and 5x here to get my 15x squared. And then both of my signs here are going to be negative because this is a positive 24, but a negative 38. So a negative times a negative is a positive, and then when I add them together, I want them to be negative. So the numbers that are closest together here, one's going to get multiplied by 3 and the other one's going to multiply by 5. So if we start with a 4 and a 6, 3x times 5x is 15x squared. Negative 18 minus 20 is negative 38. Oh, how about that? It worked out on the first try. That's awesome. And then negative 4 times negative 6 is positive 24. So you guys, a lot of this, like you kind of heard me kind of hesitating as I was thinking about the 4 and 6. I'm kind of starting to look at it and do it in my head as I pick my numbers so that I'm not doing a lot of writing and erasing and writing and erasing. So don't be so quick to throw numbers in here unless you don't mind like writing and erasing and doing that process over and over again. But kind of as I was looking at these, I was thinking, okay, one needs to multiply by 3, one needs to multiply by 5. How can I kind of get there? So take your time with that. And that's what I mean by it's not just a stab in the dark. You really want to start making a little bit more of an educated guess here. However, if you're not seeing the pattern, then just start putting numbers in and taking those stabs in the dark. And as you do that, the patterns will start developing and you'll get better at it. Okay, so sometimes you just have to start with it, especially if you don't have the greatest number sense. It's just not everybody's strong suit. So if it's not, then just take your time with it. Take those stabs in the dark and let the patterns kind of develop as you work. All right, now on the bottom, the only difference here is that we're solving. So obviously we're going to need to take it that step further. And we're also going to want to make sure that we have one side equal to 0 before we start factoring. So if you take a look at number 4, we have 6y squared plus 27y plus 30 equals 0. So that's good. We're equal to 0. I can take a GCF out here. If I take out a 3, then I'm left with 2y squared plus 9y plus, not 15. Sorry, guys. Let's try 10 on for size. Awesome. All right. So plus 10 equals 0. And by taking that GCF out, this is why we always want to take out a GCF. You could factor this from the get-go. It's just that the numbers are a lot bigger. And in doing so, now we have a prime number as our a value that we're going to factor, which is nice. So we drop down our 3, set up our 2 sets of parentheses. Okay, a couple things I know. This has to be a 2y, this has to be a y, so that when I multiply those, I get my 2y squared. My signs are both positive, so they're both going to stay positive. And then the only thing we really need to think about here is that my factors of 10 are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. And remember, you're trying to get to 9y. So one of these is going to get multiplied by 2. Well, obviously 1 and 10 are out, considering we have both positives. So 2 and 5, I'm going to put my 5 here and my 2 here. Because if I multiply 2 by 2, I get 4, and add 5, I get 9. So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for when I write these out. And that's why I strongly encourage you guys to write out the factors, especially when you have problems that have a lot of factors. It's just easier to see that. So we have 2y times y is 2y squared. 4y plus 5y is 9y, and 5 times 2 is 10. So then remember, it's all 3 of these could be possibilities for 0. If your GCF is a variable, you don't want to forget it. That's why I always just check it. 3 equals 0. I know that's not going to get me anywhere, but I always want to mentally make sure I checked it. Then you have 2y plus 5 equals 0, and y plus 2 equals 0. So we get 2y equals negative 5, and y is negative 5 halves. So that's one of our answers. And then over here, all I need to do is subtract 2 from both sides, and my other answer is negative 2. Okay. Then, there we go. Over here, for number 5, this is not equal to 0, so I need to subtract 3 over. So I end up with 10p squared minus 13p minus 3 equals 0. Okay. I don't have a GCF here, so I can start by setting up my parentheses. Okay, factors of 10 are 1 and 10. We just did that one, and 2 and 5. I still write them out every problem. Factors of 3, this is nice. We're only dealing with 1 and 3. So I'm trying to get to 13, and I'm going to look at that and say, okay, well, 10 and 3 can get me 13. So I'm actually going to start with the 10p and the p, which we don't normally do. And then I'm going to put the 3 here and the 1 here. So that hopefully I can get to a 3. Now when you do this, you end up with 10p times p is 10p squared. My signs, I'm going to need 1 negative, 1 positive. So 10p times p is 10p squared. 10p minus 3p is negative 7p. So it's actually not going to work because my signs are 1 negative, 1 positive. If they were both the same thing, I could get to 13. And then you guys, normally I would say, okay, well, the next thing is let's switch these, right? Let's make this a 1 and let's make this a 3. But I can kind of see from there, that means I'm going to multiply and get a 30, and that's going to be way off. So I'm going to take 1 and 10 totally out of the running. And I can now, obviously, with 3 and 1, those are the only options I have there, so I can't take that out of the running. But now I'm going to try my 2 and my 5. So 2p and 5p equals 0. We're going to need 2 different signs here. Okay, so obviously one of these is going to get multiplied by 3. I'm trying to get to 13 or negative 13. If I multiply 3 by 5, I get 15. 15 and 2 can get me 13. So I'm going to put my 3 here and my 1 here. Because 2p times 5p is 10p squared. Then I get 2p minus 15p, which is negative 13p, which is good. That's what I wanted. And negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. So I'm good. So now I know that 2p minus 3 could be 0. And 5p plus 1 could also be 0. So if I solve those, oh my god, that's a 0, guys. My computer seriously hates me. We're going to add 3 to both sides and get 2p equals, 3. And then divide both sides by 2, and p is 3/2. That's one answer. That should be a 2. And then subtract 1 from both sides here. We get 5p equals -1. Divide by 5, and your other answer is -1/5. Okay, shows little or as much work as you need there, you guys, because I know not everybody needs to see this, but you'd be surprised how many people make that mistake on the fractions because they try and do it in their head and make a mistake. So make sure that you are doing that correctly in your head if you're not showing any work. Okay. All right. Last but not least, we have number 6. Okay. If you look at number 6, you guys, yesterday we talked about a problem like this where I brought everything over, but I don't want my a squared to be negative if I can avoid it. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to add 4a squared over to the right hand side. So I have 0 equals a positive 4a squared because I added it over. And then that minus 8a plus 3 stays the same. Sorry, this is really horrible. My computer's slow. All right, so factors of 4 are 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. And then factors of 3 are 1 and 3. We don't have a GCF. Sorry, I kind of mentally checked that off in my head and didn't say anything about it. So, sorry guys, that's a 0, clearly. If you set up your 2 sets of parentheses here, all right, we're trying to get to -8, and one of the numbers is going to multiply by 3. I know I have a 1 and a 3 here, and this is positive. I know both of my signs are going to be negative because negative positive, right? -1 times -3 is a positive 3, but then I have a negative middle term. So I need to get to -8. So if I multiply this by 2, I get 2. If I multiply this by 2, I get 6. So that was looking good. I'm going to put 2a in both spots. Sorry, you guys, this handwriting is atrocious this morning. 2a times 2a is 4a squared. -6a minus 2a is -8a, and -1 times -3 is +3. Awesome. So we have 2, that's not a 2, even close. Sorry, guys. You're going to set both of those equal to 0. Let's try this again. There we go. All right, so we have 2a minus 1 equals 0, and 2a, come on, sorry guys, it's getting really bad, minus 3 equals 0. Wow, that's awesome handwriting. Okay, so we have 2a equals 1 when you add 1 to both sides, divide by 2, and a is a positive 1/2. It should be an a. So that's one of your answers. And then we're going to add 3 to both sides here. And we get 2a equals 3. Kind of. Divide by 2, and a is 3/2. So those are your 2 answers. Okay. All right. So you guys, like I've said before, there's no exact science to this other than there is starting to see like number patterns and just recognizing them, and you just have to keep doing it, and you have to keep struggling, and you have to keep trying and guessing and trying and guessing, and it'll start to get a lot easier. But if you don't put pen to paper and just keep your pencil to paper, don't use pen with these, and keep doing it and doing it and doing it, you'll never get to that point of like, oh, this is easy, we can do this. Most people really do end up liking factoring, but usually that comes about next week sometime. Okay, so really make sure that you get this homework done. If you're behind on any homework, you guys really take this break to make sure that you catch up on everything you need to. so that next week you can come in with specific questions and understand exactly what you need help on. Okay. Have an awesome Thanksgiving.